and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Love Procurement Podcast. My name is Kelly Barner, and I'll be your host for this conversation. Today, I'm glad to welcome Vishal Patel, VP of Product Marketing at Ivalua, to the show to not only share more about what this podcast will be about, but also to introduce some of the core questions we're going to be asking all of our guests going forward. So, hi, Vishal. Thank you so much for being here with me to kick off the show.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and wonderful to finally be able to launch this podcast.
Absolutely. Now, for anybody in procurement that has not already met you, maybe we should start off by giving you an opportunity to share a little bit more about your background and experience.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the procurement technology space for probably the last 15 to 16 years. Most of that has been with the technology providers. So Ivalua for 6 years and others for a bit. But before that, I was on the analyst side of things, basically writing about analyzing, assessing all the different vendors in the space. And I remember starting with being an analyst covering contract lifecycle management back in around 2005. So when that was a technology category that was very small, and now the things have certainly changed there.
Now it's huge. Absolutely. Now, in terms of the sort of the backstory on this podcast, I see you've chosen what to wear very wisely. This is sort of a trademark thing. We always see this when you're on screen. Talk to me a little bit about the idea to have a podcast and maybe the role that shirt you're wearing right now might have played in it.
Yeah, so this kind of began, I think, about 4 years ago. We were trying to figure out how can we build a little bit of a procurement community, and what I'd realized in all the time I've been in this space is whenever people talk about procurement, they really there's something very genuine about how they see their roles, and people really enjoy what they do, it seems. So it kind of came about specifically around one of our events where we had the idea to kind of just ask people the question, why do you love procurement? And the responses that we got were pretty overwhelming, and some really great quotes about why people love procurement, right? Like that it's sort of a backbone for a company's strategy, and it involves innovation and a lot of collaboration with different parts of the business. And there was a lot of really great quotes, and so it kind of started from there. And so we turned it into this hashtag, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And then the next natural move, I guess, was to have a podcast, and just talk about the same kind of topics, right? So why is it that people love procurement? What's exciting about this world now? Have some interesting speakers on, and just do it in a light, fun way where we can hopefully share some good insights.
Well, and this is really funny too, and I can share sort of a different perspective on this. So for anybody that's just listening to the audio, Vishal has this shirt on and it says #LoveProcurement in big, bold letters right across the front. And I've had the opportunity with my business partner, Philip Eidson, to host many, many on-screen webinars with Vishal. And as an event moderator, I just learned over time, right out of the gate, acknowledge the t-shirt, because we would get into the event. And of course, we like to run engaging audience participation-based conversations. It never failed. 9 out of the first 10 questions we got in the event were, how do I get the shirt? Everybody was very focused on getting the shirt. Procurement loves their merch.
Yeah.
So you went from inspiration at an event to merch, which is super trendy, to podcast. And so you're definitely sort of visually representing that today. Like I said, now we just open the events by saying, yep, we all know we love the shirt. Let's just talk about the shirt, and then we can move on and talk about procurement.
Yeah.
So given all that background, it seems only fitting for me to be the first person to ask you before anybody else, Vishal, why do you love procurement?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I think where it first sort of came to me was actually one of a college professor, if I go back that far, where the question was more about, it was just a question that kind of led to the exploration of this whole area, I guess. But it was a very sort of abstract question. I think it was something around like, what does the sun in New Zealand have to do with the sweater you just bought at the mall in California? And so it just kind of started with that. And as you might guess, right, the reasons for that are largely the value chain and how you're buying wool from New Zealand. Sheep in New Zealand are like a big produce, right? Like wool, and obviously sheep eat grass and grass needs sun. So that was the thing that connected the dots. But it was like a very it was like kind of a bit of an aha moment, I guess, where I'm like, yeah, okay, so every business does have to do this, and they're relying on a supply chain, and there's someone that has to be there to manage and build relationships with suppliers, and that's how I got into procurement.
Well, I can almost one up you. So you went back to college. I'm going to go back to kindergarten. So I think my love for procurement is actually thanks to Mr. Rogers. Anybody that grew up in my generation watched Mr. Rogers, and he would do the factory tours. How do they make trumpets? How do they make crayons? What is a sugar bean and what do they do with it? And I remember being in an early corporate role and recognizing that this is the team that sort of has to take it apart so they can buy it or make it and put it back together again. It's sort of the ultimate peek behind the scenes. And that goes for products as well as services. Finding out, how does a grocery store run? How does that food get from the distribution center to the warehouse, to the location, to the floor where you can buy it? What are all the different technologies that are involved in making that work? So from my perspective, I'm right with you. I also love procurement. But to me, it's, you can't truly appreciate how complex and magnificent any kind of business it is. And it doesn't matter if you're pest control or if you're making the very latest type of responsive technology. Every single business is unique and complicated and fascinating. And I think procurement is one of the only teams that gets to stop and really focus in on the details or the secret sauce of what makes that business tick.
Yeah, no, I think you're super right there. Even earlier on in my career, earlier on I was working more in an emerging market, right? So in Kenya, but in places like that, actually, what your competitive advantage is actually from how you buy better.
Yes.
Not so much. It's not so focused on like the selling component, right? Because you're reliant on global suppliers and such. So your advantage is on how you buy better.
Now, you talked a little bit about recognizing the importance of community and in sort of coming up with the initial concept for love procurement. But in a corporate setting, where we're all very careful and very respectful, love isn't necessarily something that we always talk about. So I'm interested in your perspective on the connection between the work that procurement does and the idea of community and a force as strong as love. It's not the procurement podcast. It's not the procurement is okay or pretty good podcast. We're talking love and community and coming together. Where is the connection for you in that?
Yeah, so it's probably a few different things there. So I think it all starts basically with the fact that I do think many people in procurement do love what they do, right? And but it also, on the flip side, I think it's a little bit to do with how procurement wants to be more appreciated by the people they serve and the business partners that they work in collaboration with, and the suppliers that so there's a lot there in terms of procurement and relationships with internal departments, external suppliers. And I think it's both to do with people actually enjoying what they do and loving procurement and why it is they do love procurement, but also the fact that there is a need and there's this desire to kind of be recognized, right, for what you're doing. And I think that's what maybe people sort of held on to with this hashtag love procurement thing, right?
Yeah. Now, the show is going to be coming out every other Tuesday. So, officially, everybody pause right now. Mark that in your calendars. Every other
Yeah.
Tuesday, you now have a commitment. You're part of this loving community. Uh, what would you say are some of the reasons that people should tune in regularly? What's sort of going to be the tone, the format, the type of content that we're going to
Yeah.
create?
Yeah, so we're looking for to keep this light and fun. This isn't about Ivalua at all, really. It's about the community, right? Like the procurement community, our partners, our customers. Generally anyone in procurement, right? And that has something unique to share, some insights, is willing to jump on a podcast and talk about something fun about procurement or share anything. And we have some really good. Podcast guests coming up. So an exciting start to this for sure.
Are there any we can tease? Are we sure enough that we can tease any of the people or topics that will be
Yes,
covered in upcoming episodes?
absolutely. So I can tell you, we will have our chief product officer on talking about generative AI. We'll have our CEO on talking about the Ivalua story. That one's probably the only one that's a little bit about us because I feel like it is a good story. But then we have others. We have Oliver Hurry from the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. We have a Women in Procurement podcast, which is focusing just basically on that topic, right? Like women in procurement, sorry. And a few others that we're still planning. Yeah.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to all of those. And I'm very lucky because I'm going to get to participate in a lot of them. So, certainly, we want people to tune in and hear those episodes. But, Vishal, now that we've shared what the show is going to be, what the background is, what people can expect to hear, let's wrap by maybe going through a little exercise of sharing the love. Is there a piece of advice or a thought that you'd like to leave viewers and listeners with?
Yeah, I think overall, I would go back to the community aspect, really, right? So, it is sort of a community effort, right? To appreciate procurement, recognize procurement, improve procurement, and just do better, right? Like in all the things that we're doing, and that's what we're about. And I'd say, not so much advice, but if you have something to share and you'd like people to hear it and you'd like to share with the community, then we're definitely open to having you on the podcast.
Now, if people are listening and watching and they would like to get in touch with you specifically, maybe to ask about the shirt, I'm just going to make a guess. Somebody's going to ask about the shirt. What is the best way for people to get in touch?
LinkedIn is probably the best way. Yeah.
Excellent. And we will share a link to Vishal's LinkedIn profile in today's show notes. So, regardless of where you found this episode, scroll down and it'll be right there. Vishal, I think this is very exciting. We're thrilled to be
Yeah.
kicking off this show. Thank you so much for being with me.
Yeah, super excited about it. Cannot wait for this to launch very soon. So thank you.